Hello everybody, I'm Chandranshu Jain and let's continue our SQL journey. Till now we have explored how to install PostgresQL. We have also understood how to create a database and open the query tool in which we will query about data in SQL. So we will be writing our first query today in which we will be using the basic SQL statement which is a create table statement. So without any delay, let's start. So what is a create table statement in SQL? So the create table statement informs SQL about basic information about the table, like what is the table name, what is the column name or the attribute name, what type of information the columns will store, and we also apply constraints to make the data look more accurate and reliable. So this is about create table, and we will now understand the syntax of create table. So the create table syntax something looks like this. First we write the create table statement, then we write the table name. In brackets we write the information about the column name, the type means the data type, and the size if there is any particular, it is an optional parameter. We can also apply constraints which are also optional. It is very important to end the query with semicolon because it indicates to SQL that is the end of the query. Before moving ahead, let's understand some parameters of create table syntax in detail. So first parameter is type parameter. So type parameter is basically the data type which the instances will have of the in a particular column. Like type 1 is the instance or the data type which each instance of column 1 will have. So it can be either integer if we have integer data type, it can be boolean for 0 1, it can be varchar for a character variable, and it can be even datetime. So now second will be the size parameter. Size parameter is optional one, but we will put it if we have any particular limit, like in phone number, Aadhaar number, passport number. We have some limitations like Aadhaar number is of 12 digits, so we can put is int 12. Phone number is of 10 digits, so we put int 10. So it indicates to SQL that the each instance of phone number is of integer type and it will be having 10 digits. So this is how the size parameter works. Constraints put some limitations or put some conditions on the instances of each column, and which we will discuss in great detail. Now let's see some examples. First is the customer table. So we will exactly follow the syntax. First we will create table, then enter the table name which is customer. We will have three columns: customer ID, customer name, phone number. We have their data types. We also applied some constraints on non-null and unique and the primary key as well. Before we move ahead, it's important to maintain good healthy habits about writing queries. One can write query in one line as well, but it's preferable to have the query broken down so that it's easy and more readable. Like here, it's really easy. Like okay, our table is customer table. It has customer ID. Oh, it has customer name and phone number. It is of customer ID is of integer type. Phone number is of integer. Customer name is a variable character, and there is a primary key of which is customer ID. So it is really easy to understand and read. Now let's look at the second example. So we are creating a table which is orders table. It has order ID, customer ID, order month, and order value. We have some constraints attached to it as well. Now let's go and execute these statements in SQL. So we have created the trial database yesterday. We see that there is no table. So we have entered the two queries. We see that semicolon has been put at the end of each query, and now we will select the entire query, and we will click this run button. This is basically the run button, or we can click F5 to run our query. We run our query, it returns table is created. We see that the first table is there, customer table, and we can click column. So we see that there is customer ID and the customer name and phone number. Constraints are also there. We can run our second table as well, which is the order table. We see that it is run, but sometimes it is that even if we run, but it is not visible, so we may need to refresh our database. So we go to the database and right click and click refresh. After refreshing, the tables will appear. So we see there are two tables and the order table is also visible. So we see that in the columns there are four columns and their constraints are visible as well. Now let's just focus on constraints. So these are the constraints which are used in creating tables to make our data look more readable and understandable. First is a non-null constraint. Basically, this indicates to SQL that a particular attribute will have no instance missing. No value of any column will be missing. Like if we have attached non-null to phone number, so every instance will have a phone number. It any column can have missing value, but the phone number column will have all values. Unique will tell that there has to be unique values in each case for the entire column. Primary key and secondary key are also important constraints which will be discussed in great detail. But for now, we will take a primary key is a constraint which gives a representative column for the entire table, and foreign key is one which links the tables differently. So this is what primary key is, the unique identifier column for a table, and foreign key is the linker that develops relation. That is why we say in SQL we deal with relational databases. Now check constraint checks that if all the instances of a particular column satisfy a particular condition, and default parameter gives values in case of missing instances to a particular column. Now let's further look into the keys. There are many types of keys like candidate key, super key, but we'll focus mainly on primary key and secondary. First, what is primary key? So primary key, as I told, primary key is some constraint which gives a representative column to the entire data table. Like if we have allotted the customer ID to be the primary key, so basically each customer will be identified by the primary key. Like we go in a hotel, we are given a key number or we are given a customer number, so that number will be the identification for entire uh, system or SQL. Whenever we want to refer to a particular person, we will use that key number. So when we allot a column to a primary key, two constraints are automatically attached to it. First is unique and second is non-null. Because a primary key cannot have null values, it cannot have missing values, and each value should be a unique value. And there can be only one primary key in a table, because obviously one attribute can be only one. There can be only one representative of an entire column. There can be more than one attributes representing a column. Like let's say in our table we have phone number, we have name, and we have the passport number, but each person does not have a passport obviously, so it can have missing values, so it disqualifies to be a primary key. So now a name can have also non-unique values, so it also disqualifies. So but name and phone number combinedly can to be better to form a primary key. So if we combine phone number and the name to form a primary key, such a key is called composite key. Now let's look at foreign key. Foreign key is basically a key which develops relations between tables. So it links or relates or references one table to other using one column. When we apply foreign key constraint, so it's important to remember that whatever column we are referencing to must have unique and non-null values. That is why mostly we refer to a primary key. And now just uh, look using the ERD diagram or the relation diagram, which helps us in visualizing the relationship between the databases. First we have customer table, and second we have order table. So we see that in customer table there are three attributes: customer ID, customer name, and phone number. In orders table we have four attributes: customer ID, order month, and order value. And we see that customer ID of order table links the order table and the customer table using the customer ID of the customers table. So this is with the help of this relational diagram, ERD diagram, which we call in short entity relationship diagram, we can easily understand the entire relationship between tables in SQL. Now look at another example. So here we create an employee table in which there is ID, there is name, and there is phone number, and we have age. We apply the constraint check to see that each employee age is greater than 18, and we apply constraint default that if anyone one has not entered the age, or if a particular instance has missing age, we give it 18. And the primary key is ID. So basically ID has to be, each employee has unique ID, and every employee has one ID. Also every employee has to submit the name because there is non-null uh, constraint on name attribute, and each phone number is unique. So this is what basically it is important to note, that ID column stores the ID of employees, and no two employees have same ID because it is unique, and non-null because everybody has an ID. And the age column stores the age, and the SQL checks that each employee is of 18 or above, and if no age is given, then we assume it to be 18. So this is basically what the create table is all about. And we can create tables easily. Everyone can practice it. And thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, and do submit your feedback using the comment box, and it is really helpful.